physically and in your own house spiritually. And that really is the solution. If people collectively began to take seriously their own house, their own spirits, then the White House would take care of itself.
I wrote The Bible and Bitcoin for you, Bible-believing Christian, and in it I lay out the biblical basis for what money is, why our current fiat monetary system is ungodly, and how Bitcoin is the best and most viable, biblically compliant replacement for government fiat money. There's even a small group study guide in the back with additional resources to study with your church small group. Get it on Amazon or pay with Bitcoin at thebibleandbitcoin.com for a discount.
Welcome to another episode of the Bible and Bitcoin podcast. And on today's episode, well, as I always say, I'm Alin Armstrong, aka Pastor Coin, blah, blah, blah. On today's episode, I'm excited. I'm in a rush because I'm excited to discuss the election. This is called the Election Special with none other than the infamous Normies and Shambles. How are you today, sir?
Doing well, Alan. Happy Friday. Hope it's been a shamtastic day.
It most certainly has been shamtastic. Lots of good stuff going on today. Of course, today's Friday, but you'll be listening to this on Monday. Today we had a pump in Bitcoin price, and people are talking about MicroStrategy, and MicroStrategy hit a new all-time high, and there's controversy there. But we're talking about the election today and Bitcoin. In your opinion, sir, does it matter who wins? Some people say if Trump doesn't win, the bull market's canceled. If Trump does win, we're going to have a bull market like no one has ever seen. What do you think? Are we going up regardless, or are we going higher if Trump wins?
I think it's a combination of the middle and super bull run. I think regardless, we're going to have a nice little uptick in the market. But if Trump is elected and the approval of the strategic Bitcoin reserve also gets approved, we'll be in good shape, mostly because of the dwindling supply that's on exchanges. Sure, that'll naturally happen over the course of the remaining years of this cycle, but that sort of push towards the strategic reserve will kind of organically, drive that, a bit more aggressively, and we might see a cycle top that's double what it could have otherwise been if Shamala wins.
Do you think that's going to really happen? I know people are really skeptical when it comes to the strategic Bitcoin reserve, especially since this week rumors are circulating that the U.S. government is going to sell the remaining, I forget how many, 60-something thousand Bitcoins they have from Silk Road. So what do you think's happening there? Are the Democrats trying to unload Bitcoin before Trump gets in to kind of throw a wrench in the plan? Or is this just sort of the government being the government? Because to me, it seems like one of the dumbest things the United States of America could possibly do. I mean, think about it. This is a country that has the world reserve currency already, who can print and create as many units of this currency that they want. Why would they sell Bitcoin, which they can't create any more of? For money, they can, at the snap of a finger, create as much as they want of.
Yeah, I think it actually just goes to show the byproduct of the partisan politics that we have to deal with here. The parties have grown so distant that their platform is literally do the opposite of the other person. Trump comes out as pro Bitcoin, and then Kamala has like a lukewarm acceptance of it. But it's clear where her sort of mind is at, and it's more on the quote unquote blockchain technology, and things like the CBDC seem to be front and center for her, and she kind of certainly wants to throw a wrench in that, and I think Joe Biden's current administration is kind of, you know, they're kind of just going with that narrative, and it's also another dangerous point to bring up that the people kind of calling the shots aren't really the leaders themselves. It's folks like Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They're kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes there, and kind of really steering the ship. And we just have puppets on the left, whereas on the right there's a true leadership team and a true leader. So certainly they're definitely doing the the complete opposite, and I think the polls are kind of showing the problematic side of that choice, and and that choice was to sort of continue to be the complete opposite and kind of drive off of that division that the two-party, quote-unquote, two-party system has been driving.
Yeah, Trump has some interesting people on his team, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most interesting, in my opinion, has been Robert Kennedy Jr. Here's a guy who said in interviews that he would never team up with Trump. Apparently, Trump tried to get him on as his VP, but that was earlier on in the game. And RFK said that his wife would divorce him if he ever teamed up with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But yet here he is. There's that iconic photo of him and Donald Trump shaking hands, and he had a great speech at the Bitcoin Magazine conference, RFK that is,
Mm-hmm.
and seems to know his stuff about Bitcoin. You think he's going to have a big effect, or is this just sort of Trump's just... Because here's the thing, at the Bitcoin Magazine conference, Trump's speech was not that impressive for me. It was like...
Mm-hmm.
It's like he was just reading off a teleprompter, it seemed, saying some of the right things. It doesn't seem like he really cares. He promised to free Ross as well, which
Mm-hmm.
is funny to me because here's the U.S. Supreme Court saying the U.S. can sell their Silk Road Bitcoin. But in a matter of a few months, Ross, the
Mm-hmm.
Silk Road mastermind, may very well be free. So I think it would be a great irony if somehow Ross was able to buy those Bitcoins back. I think that would just be hilarious. But back to the discussion, what do you think about RFK Jr.? Is he going to have an impact, or is this thing already just set in stone?
I think he would be a key component. I know that there's people that I know that have been sort of asked to provide guidance on Bitcoin policy should Trump be elected in a couple weeks here. So I think it's going to be a nice sort of culmination of experts in the space that can kind of help guide the president or future president, former and future, hopefully, into legislation that's beneficial for the country and the people as a whole here. And yeah, the two speeches they were certainly like a night and day experience. RFK showed clear understanding of the protocol after definitely doing his research. Trump was kind of going on with the slogans and making Bitcoin in America, and and then ironically soon after the conference creates a DeFi token. So it's I think Trump is certainly using it for votes, but he will legislate and execute legislation that is pro Bitcoin, whereas I sense Kamala Harris going more towards the CBDC and digital control route.
Yeah, in my view, Trump is like he's only going to have a max of 4 years here,
Mm-hmm.
and he's done. So if he wins, he's got 4 years. That's it. He can't get reelected. It's over. Somebody else has to step in his shoes. So if he can just simply lay a good foundation
Mm-hmm.
for Bitcoin adoption in America, maybe make legislation a little more favorable towards the Bitcoin industry. People will say crypto. It's going to be crypto, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. He's going to make regulations for crypto, and we all know crypto's a scam, but they lump it all into one. If he can make it a little more favorable, a little more easy, and have a SEC chair that's not a total goof, then moving forward, this is going to be very favorable for Bitcoin in the future. Not that I think Bitcoin needs it. I mean, there's people out here saying if Trump doesn't win, it's over, Bitcoin's done. Like, this is silliness. Bitcoin was created for adversarial environments. So if we enter into an environment that's not so adversarial, that's just a bonus as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
What do you think the likelihood is that we actually see a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Because it's looking like, well, let me ask you this question actually before we get to that. Let me ask you what you think the left's chief disagreement will be if Donald Trump does a strategic Bitcoin reserve, because here he's going to be using US dollars to buy Bitcoin. I can see people getting really upset with that, especially a guy like Peter Schiff, who, if the United States government starts stacking sats for a reserve, he's going to not be happy about that. So what do you think the left's chief argument will be against the U.S. government doing something like this?
Mm-hmm. So I actually kind of think so Peter Schiff would be a bit more understanding, considering he's got his own little inscriptions now, his gold inscriptions. But the left as a whole, though, I think they'll use that as a way to try to get increased funding for social programs or some sort of climate incentive, some sort, kind of like. Sure, I know the Paris Agreement was agreed to via executive order, so it was first, we stepped away, and then now Biden brought us back in. I think there would be a sort of similar thing where Congress will kind of hold some capital through earmarks and punch, kind of punch in their line items in some of these bills that go through Congress. So certainly infrastructure, things like that. So it could end up doing more harm than good.
Yeah. I just don't want to. I don't want to see Bitcoin become a political football where for 4 years it's favorable, then for the next 4 years it's not favorable, just because lefties want to say, well, that money could have been given to the poor. It reminds me of Judas, actually. Because if you recall in the Bible, Judas, he when a woman gave expensive perfume to Jesus, poured it on his feet, Judas got upset and he said, hey, what gives? That perfume could have been sold and that money could have been given to the poor. And Jesus said, hey, you know what, you're always going to have the poor with you. What this woman did was a good thing, because I won't always be with you, well, at least in the flesh. And that's really sort of what the left wing reminds me of, and how I can see this thing playing out, where they'll say, hey, that money you used to buy Bitcoin, the world's best, hardest, most fair money, could have been given to the poor, when really they don't care about the poor. They don't care about they like that there's poverty, because they just keep using and abusing these people to get votes and increase their power. How do you see this thing playing out? Is this going to become a political football, or can we actually just come to a bipartisan understanding that something like Bitcoin is good, not just for the United States, but for everybody in the world?
So I think it does become a sort of political football, perhaps not to the extent of the reserves that we have for things like petroleum, where, for example, Biden basically wiped out our entire strategic reserve to keep gas prices, quote unquote, down, even though we're still paying $3 and $4 a gallon here. So I think in the Bitcoin reserve case, I know that there was a line there where it would be sort of time locked and can't be sold. But again, similar to any other sort of legislation, you can you can overwrite and rewrite certain aspects of laws and bills. So I could see a point in time where there could be a supermajority Democrat Congress that will introduce legislation to perhaps sell.
Could you imagine what happens in an environment where Trump stacks 200K Bitcoin? I think that was the number. And then Democrats come in and sell it all. I mean, this can get wild.
Yeah, and that's a variable that I think is more realistic. Just because it's. I mean, if you look at what Biden did on day one, he pretty much had like close to 100 executive orders, all of which were doing the complete opposite of what Trump had dictated, and then ironically only kept the one that was beneficial, which was the tariff angle. But I think policy as a whole is just it's trending towards that, where it's one team comes in, does their thing, tries to clean it up, and then the other, as they tries to clean it up in the way that they believe is the best way, right? And then the other party will come in, do that same thing on their side. So it's just a game of tug of war where the people left holding the bag are the citizens, and that's a global issue. It's not just an American issue.
That's true. Well, here's the thing. Like, Trump is the most what's the word? He's one of the most controversial presidents, politicians in a long time, for better or for worse. Maybe much of it is fabricated. Maybe much of it is true. I don't know. I'm not here to defend anybody, really. But the reality is he's been so demonized that it's like you either love him or hate him, it seems. And so if he wins, which I think he will, and he's done after 4 years, do you think perhaps the political landscape can mellow out a bit? Or do you think Democrats and Republicans will just find somebody else to hate as much as Trump?
Yeah, I think I would hope that it mellows out and we get a bit of consistency with leadership. So if Trump wins, there's a natural sort of progression where JD Vance is now in his 40s at that time, right? Potentially in 4 years, can hopefully get 2 terms, and then now that opens up the door towards the prospects of some Bitcoiners being potential candidates.
Is Michael Saylor going to be president, you think, one day?
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, especially if we have that consistency and that the strategic reserve, and he knows, you know, he knows how to stack. And he knows how to leverage debt to to create value. But I don't know if he has the policy chops otherwise though. So it might certainly be somebody that's slowly gaining traction now, but may be a bit of a force in the coming decade. And there are some people that come to mind, but I don't want to name names quite yet.
I think there's some good potential on the horizon here, but I mean, it's so you can't. It's so hard to call. It's impossible to know.
Mhm.
My take is I think Trump will win. He'll finish 4 years out, and we'll have a more balanced, less divisive rhetoric going
Mhm.
on in American politics. However, who knows? Honestly, who knows? It could get even crazier the way things are going. It's just hard to see how somebody can be demonized more than Donald Trump, but
Mhm.
you never know. Things can get really crazy really quick, especially with the power dynamics and how the fiat money system is just seems to be, oh man, not. I mean, with the latest rate cuts and everything
Mhm.
going on, it just seems like the Federal Reserve and the whole dollar is walking on thin ice. How much longer? I mean, this isn't really election related, but I
Mhm.
want to get your take. How much longer do you think they can kick this can down the road? Because it seems like every day someone's calling for a big depression, a big recession, and it just never really comes because they're able to just paper over it. Does
Mhm.
this ever end?
Um, it 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 might. It's trending towards kind of what what we discussed in the first episode here. It's trending towards that, that sort of mm, I wouldn't say. I still think it's still trending towards that hyperinflationary scenario, where the spending is starting to get out of control now. Um, you know, and then the people left literally holding the bag are the American citizens in our case, where they're 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 allocating FEMA capital incorrectly, right? They're using that money to fund migrants, and using that money to fund other issues across the globe, including funding Ukraine's side of their conflict. So I think that spending is going to keep keep being a thorn on our side, and it's only going to get worse. And I personally, it, it's hard to describe it. Lowering rates was not a good idea in this sort of moment here. Um, it was also not a good idea to raise them, right? So we were in this weird spot. We're putting lipstick on a pig with our market. We're making it look a little bit better than it actually is. And what's going to happen is, if and when the market does collapse in an '08 style crash, it's going to be more devastating, because wages aren't keeping up with inflation, even though they're saying it's at 2.4%. Again, that's at levels that with goods that they're sort of cooking the books with. So overall, I think it's going to end pretty dramatically, and they're just going to keep putting the band-aids on, but eventually they're going to run out of band-aids.
Donald Trump said he kind of teased that, hey, maybe we can pay off the national debt with Bitcoin. I don't know if he's actually thought deeply about that, or
Hmm.
if it just popped into his mind in the moment. But a lot of people have talked about that. If the United States can stack enough sats. RFK put forward a proposition if he became president that he would, over I think 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, back the U.S. debt with commodities and assets, and one of those was Bitcoin. The idea was, I think, 1% a year, accumulate 1% a year of assets to back the debt, and in 100 years, basically the U.S. dollar would be 100% backed. Is that viable, do you think? Is there actually a way out where the U.S. doesn't completely implode and they can slowly but surely, balance this absolutely disastrous debt load?
Yeah, I think having commodities backed uh, dollars is probably the most important thing that we can do. Having a sound money in some way, shape, or form is the way to go. Or else, as we mentioned earlier in the last episode, that moral decay and the collapse of society as we know it is only going to be exacerbated, right? So it's only going to get worse the longer that we go away from having a sound money and a sound backing.
Let's talk about the election a little bit. Practically speaking here, where do you see it going? Who wins? I've been following it very closely, watching video after video of polls from different states. I'll give you my take after, but where do you see this thing going? Does Trump win big? How many electoral votes do you think he will get, if you think he'll win? And on election night, who takes the presidency this time?
Yeah. So I hope I'm wrong, but I'm sort of bracing for a similar situation that we had in 2020. I'm expecting Trump to win. I would love for him to win, but even just with the hurricane stuff, the recent hurricanes in North Carolina, for example, they're already changing the election laws. So, for example, people in North Carolina were able to sort of drop their ballots off anywhere. And there's teams of, they call them election, help, or election vote gatherers or whatever. But long story short, the state of North Carolina has people dedicated to harvesting ballots, and it doesn't matter which county you're from, right? So if you're from where Raleigh is, you might be able to drop off your ballot somewhere in the Outer Banks, and your vote would still get registered somewhere. So you might see things like 300 to 400% voter turnout, and North Carolina which can flip blue, which it would in this case be similar to Georgia in the last cycle. And that's just one use of, I would sort of brace for anything for Florida as well, but that certainly is the case in North Carolina. And you have you have things like in California, Gavin Newsom just reinstated the mask mandate until March. So there's going to be something between here and the election itself. I don't know what it is. It could be another mass natural disaster or a flare up in a pandemic type, COVID. But they're gonna try to change some of the election rules again and kind of reallocate the ballots and kind of play that game, because that's all they have. For example, when migrants are coming into the U.S., I've heard from people that work within the Homeland Security and sort of the government, that they're giving these folks IDs they're and pretty much setting them up with the ability to vote. Uh, you know, there was that thing that J.D. Vance brought up in the vice presidential debate where they have the app, they go in the app, punch in what they have to punch in, all of a sudden their legal status, and long story short, there's a reason why when legislation was introduced to forbid non-citizens from voting, the Democrats push back on that. So it's they've been importing voters now for the last 4 years. So it's going to have to be a landslide for Trump to win, and I honestly think it's the last real shot, or else we will see a sort of perpetual Democrat in office. And if Trump were to win, I'm seeing around 309 electoral votes going his way, and that would include winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina staying with him, keeping Florida, and potentially flipping Georgia and Arizona and Nevada. So hopefully that's the case. All the polls are in his favor. I'm just, when it comes to the Democrats, I'm a little weary with their with their strategy.
Your family, your nation, and your world needs strong men. The devil wants men weak, emasculated, and addicted to porn. This is why I designed the Slaying the Beast course to help men take back the dominion porn stole from them. This course will help you discover your identity as God's image, how porn leverages and twists that against you, and how with God's help you can turn the tables on the beast and live free. There's also access to a Discord server where you can have fellowship with others in the fight. You do not have to wait any longer to conquer this beast once and for all. Go to lifegiverchurch.net to get started today.
I don't blame you. 2020 was certainly very sketchy. Was a different time with COVID, so I suppose it was much easier back then to convince people that it was dangerous to go vote, and you needed mail-in ballots, and it was a lot easier to cheat back then, I think. So I think this time around, Trump's going to win pretty easily, I think. He's going to get over 300 electoral votes. He'll win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona. Don't know about Nevada, but that doesn't matter. They don't have many electoral votes anyway, so he can lose that. It's not really even a big deal. I think he takes it with over 300. A similar electoral map to 2016, I think, will play out. And he'll be the first president to ever only beat female opponents, which I think is the biggest irony in all of this. Because, right, they've been saying Trump this whole time he's been in politics. It hates women. He's misogynistic. He's a woman hater. And for him to go down as the only president to only beat female opponents would just be the irony of ironies. So I think that's what's going to happen. I also don't think Joe Biden likes Kamala Harris very much right now either. I think he's trying to sabotage her as well. So that's my take. Yeah. We'll see in a couple weeks what actually happens. But I think Trump wins quite easily here. Just the Democrats seem way too desperate right now. They're doing weird stuff, like trotting Tim Walz onto Fox News, and Kamala Harris is doing interviews again, and all of a sudden she seems like interested in talking to the press. It's just like, it just reeks of desperation. I think they know that their time is up and it's game over. Yeah. So that's my prediction. I think we see 100K Bitcoin by the new year, and next year, sky's the limit. I don't know. My top I think is 250. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think cycle top, well, end of year top next year, probably around there to 290 to 300 ish range. Um, One thing I forgot to bring up, Kamala was on Univision, sporting a new accent, so you'll have to check out
Oh my,
that
what
clip.
was it now? What was it now?
So she was speaking with a Spanish accent.
Oh my God. Was she handing out tacos to people as well?
Very close. She also had so it was a town hall, and she had a teleprompter. So
Oh,
so
guys. America, look, you don't have to like Trump, but you can't vote for Kamala, man. This is silly. Well, what's she gonna do when Putin, launches another strike or some other enemy of the America is attacking? She gonna get on a teleprompter? Come on, guys. She's
you know
gonna
what
go into a peace meeting with a teleprompter? Like,
yeah, and she'll say, you know, I don't ask you what party you're from. I ask you how you're doing.
well, I did grow up in a middle class family,
Yeah.
and I know what it's like to have to cut your grass yourself
Yeah.
and not have servants to fold your laundry. So I'm just like you guys, you
Hmm.
know?
But yeah, and she's and to kind of bring this into a more, I wouldn't say, I'd say it's more spiritual angle. She, her ties to, um, and her good friend at the time, Diddy,
Oh
in
no.
while she was attorney general, kind of should speak volumes, and kind of how she got to where she is, uh, you know, between dating Montel Williams and all those senior citizens and stuff. So, um, yeah, her past is definitely not like Trump's, and her future is hopefully not like Trump's. So,
All right. Well, man, you said you had some Bible verses you wanted to
yeah,
share. Why don't you go ahead
yep,
and do that?
yep. So there was one or two here. So one was from Proverbs, and it was Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan.
Mhm.
And we've certainly strayed away from being a righteous people, and where when when we did have righteous leadership, we we were certainly in a much better place in terms of society, and having the nuclear family and true values. And what I consider the current rule is wicked rule, and uh, trust me, I hear the groans every day with how bad uh, the cost of living is, and just the quality of life, and how we really just can't keep up, and we're just stuck working, right? So we can't really focus on building ourselves up because we're too distracted. And then the second one here is from Ecclesiastes 10:12. The heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left. So and it there's a sort of normie saying where it's, if you're young and not, and a if you're young and not a Democrat, you have no heart. But if you're old and not a Republican, you have no brain. so, so there's that one, and then there might have been one more. Let me see. Certainly the most important one is Psalm 22:28. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. So, long story short, we can gripe about global leaders. They're just misled. They're humans. They're man. Overall, God is the one that has dominion over the land and the nations and all people. So, as long as we continue to follow him, it doesn't really matter what politicians do. God is still overseeing everything, and in the end, will continue to make sure everything goes well for us. So we do have to have faith in that.
That is really the only thing keeping me going anymore, is that truth. And I'm not a big Dave Ramsey fan, but he did say something that I think is true. And you gotta give credit where credit is due. He said, actually, I listened to this as an interview with Trump and Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey said that he tells people it's more important what happens in your house than what happens in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some truth to that. Obviously, I think it's important who's in the White House, but I think it's more important about your own house. What's happening in your own house, physically, and in your own house spiritually. And that really is the solution. Mm-hmm. If people collectively began to take seriously their own house, their own spirits, then the White House would take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, regardless of what happens on November 5th, I think the focus needs to be more locally, and people need to look internally and stop. I think it's a symptom of fiat that people are projecting onto whoever the president is or is not. Mm-hmm. Blaming, hey, if it weren't for the Democrats, hey, if it weren't for the Republicans, if Trump wasn't so mean, or if Kamala wasn't so dumb, or if Biden was not so senile. I mean, I don't want to downplay those things, because those things do have an effect. But I think ultimately those are all a result of a people who don't want God's rule. Mm-hmm. Right? You said it yourself in that scripture that when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to God, back to our own homes, and doing the next right thing. Mm-hmm. So, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that? Any other topics you wanted to discuss, or we can just end it here?
I think we're good. Just one thing that I hope happens here is, my Trump-tastic and Vance-tastic memes persist, and Shamala Harris will gain traction as the meme that she is. Shamala.
Shamala Harris. It just works. It just works. Hopefully, we'll only have to be memeing that for a couple more weeks. I mean, I guess 4 years of Shamala memes would also be quite fun, but it'd be more fun to not, I think. So, all that to say, I think Bitcoin is going to go higher from here, regardless how high, I don't know. But we're going higher, and those of us who've been saving in Bitcoin, you're going to be rewarded. And I just pray that we use that newfound wealth for righteousness and not for stupidity. I don't want a Lambo. Look, you'll never know. You'll never know. There will be signs.
There will be signs, yes.
There will be signs. But it's not going to be a Lambo. It's not going to be nice shoes. Really, you know how when Bitcoin pumps, the meme is people go on Zillow, right? And that's in the States, right? Zillow, your real estate thing. People go on Zillow. I think we have another one in Canada. It's not called that, and they look at houses and stuff. You know what I do? I look up biblical artifacts. um, like for example, there's one thing I really want to buy, and I'll try to time the top with this buy, but it's a authentic silver denarii
Mm.
that was around in the first century in the time of Christ. So you know the story in Matthew 22 where he says, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's."
Mm-hmm.
That coin, that silver coin that he asked for, that he asked the people, the Pharisees, whose image and likeness is on this coin. That coin,
Mm-hmm.
I want that coin. You can buy them; they're abundantly available, and people have excavated, and that coin is there. But it's about $1,000
Mm-hmm.
to buy one. So I think that's my Zillow purchase. That's my bull market purchase. Is an authentic first century denarii, so I can go around and tell that story with that coin in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I already bought a sulfur ball from Sodom this week. That was only $30 though.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sell Bitcoin to buy that, obviously. But that's my thing. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thing? We'll finish after this. What's your thing? What's your bull market sort of guilty pleasure that you want to buy?
Yeah, so I like collecting sports memorabilia. That's that's what, between hockey stuff and some football stuff. But yeah, like for example, I have a Connor Bedard puck coming my way.
Nice.
Didn't sell Bitcoin for it though.
I have lots of Montreal Canadiens memorabilia, but that's the only sports stuff I have. Lots of jerseys. I collect the Habs jerseys.
Yeah, and then outside of that, it's just really experiences. So, I'll be going to Chicago's home opener next week. Going to the Rangers home opener.
That's the hockey game?
Yeah. So their first home game of the season. And, flying out there, staying out there. So, it'll be a nice experience. Get to, usually I meet new people when I'm traveling solo like that. So, I always kind of use that as a means to learn from other people and to teach other people where and when I can. So it's like a nice little double whammy there in a good way.
Nice. So let's see. We got Trump winning in a couple weeks. We got Bitcoin pumping. We got a silver denarii coming my way. And we got some sports memorabilia coming your way. So there will be signs.
There will be signs.
And now you know what those signs are. So, once again, everyone, thank you for joining this special edition election special episode. I hope it was a blessing to you. Let us know, what do you think will happen? Does it matter who wins? Who will win this election? Where's Bitcoin going? And what is your bull market guilty pleasure? Keep it PG. I don't want to hear whatever's going on up in your brain. I don't want to hear that perverted stuff. If that's where you're thinking, don't bring it here. We want good, wholesome family bull market purchases. All right, guys, get your head out of the gutter. Until next time, thanks for watching, and grace and peace. Bitcoin Well is a non-custodial Bitcoin platform in Canada and the USA. That means every single Satoshi you buy goes straight to your self-custody. They offer free withdrawals, a simple 1% spread, and they have the Bitcoin Wishing Well, where you can win up to 1 million Satoshis by earning points and throwing the coin in the well. In fact, you get 5 coin tosses to the Bitcoin Wishing Well when you sign up at bitcoinwell.com/pastorcoin.